Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be making a couple different cards with this really pretty Layers of Beauty stamp set from Stampin' Up. Just when you think you have all the flower stamps that you need, they came out with this one, and this is just so pretty. I hope you stick around and so I can show you what we're going to do today, a couple different things for some different ideas. The really cool thing about this stamp set is that it not only comes with a matching set of dies so that you can cut out each of the flowers and some additional leaves and a little tag. It also comes along with what Stampin' Up calls masks, decorative masks, which other companies call stencils. So it's a set of 5 stencils. They are numbered up in the top. You don't have to use them in that order, but there are 5 of them. You can see mine is kind of stained from my ink that I was using. And what this does is helps you mask off different areas of that stamp so that you can do some type of coloring on it. And I'll show you that. I'm going to be using this for both of our cards today. All right, so to get started, hopefully you can see around all the different glares I have going on here, but I took that big main image, the flower. You can see it here on the cover. There's kind of 3 big blooms with some other little flowers and leaves, things like that. And the neat thing about this is you can really kind of turn it any direction and it looks nice. So I kind of figured out what I wanted to be the top of my image, and I'm going to stamp it directly onto my card base. We're going to just make quick and easy a flat 1-layer card to start out. So I have basic beige cardstock. I've cut it down to 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. And then I positioned the stamp over the top of my cardstock with, again, the top of my image is here, so that when I stamp it, it's gonna be on the correct panel of my base. And it'll make more sense after I do it. But I am using a stamp positioning tool. This one is no longer available, but there's a bunch of different ones out on the market. If you don't have a stamp positioning tool, you can certainly mount this onto a big acrylic block. Let me grab one here. Something kind of like this, a nice big one that might fit the whole thing. Or you could also, just as an alternative, you can lay this flat on your surface, ink it up, and then very carefully bring your cardstock over on top of it and just, kind of without moving it, pat your hand around on the back side of that cardstock to transfer the ink onto the surface. So there's a few different ways you can do it if you don't have something like this. But I'm going to use it today just to make sure that, at least for the video, we're getting a nice inked surface. So I am going to use an archival ink. This is waterproof, and I wanted to use brown just so that sometimes I like to do a nice crisp black outline, but today I just thought I want to do some little softer colors and maybe have it look a little bit more vintage. So I chose a brown and I just inked it up. I'm going to flip this over, give it a good press, and then we can ink it again. It's kind of the nice thing about using a stamp positioner is if you don't get it all, like right in through here, it didn't move, so I can just bring it back, give it another press. If this moved, I can kind of readjust and remagnet it down. And I am going to stamp it another time because there's a few lines that aren't completely filled in, and honestly, it's okay. You could leave it like that. Once you get it all filled in with color, that's hardly noticeable, but I will do this one more time. Make sure I'm giving it a good press, and let's take a peek. Much better. Oh, still missing just a little bit here. I'm actually going to go in one more time. Let's see. It's kind of right through this area here. All right, I like that. So I'm going to stop there, pull that out, and then you can see I'm flipping it around, and then when I close it, that's the front of my card, and so it's on the correct panel. So just a little tip if you're going to be using this the way that I did, just make sure that you're stamping it the direction you want so it's on the front panel correctly. Okay, so I'm just going to move this to the side and we'll start to get those masks pulled out. Okay, so we'll bring our first mask in here, and you can see the number 1, and then there's this little notch up in the corner. You can use that in different ways just to kind of help keep you lined up from one mask to the next, since there are 5 of them. I don't necessarily use the notch, but I am going to pay attention to the number at least being on the correct side. For mine, how I stamped it, I have to kind of flip this all the way upside down, and then you can just kind of wiggle it around a little bit to get those lines lined up. I can see that this one is going to do at least the 3 big blooms and then all these little buds and the smaller flowers. I like to use just a little bit of Post-it tape or you know, some type of a low tack tape to hold things in place. You can also use like a magnet board to magnet, you know, use the magnet to hold things down. I'm gonna just put Post-it tape there and there. And then one other thing to keep in mind, so I'm gonna be using an ink pad and some brushes to brush color on. If you feel like you're gonna get, you know, a little crazy and outside the lines, you can cover up your cardstock also if you feel like your brush is going to get over and onto these areas, because we're not cutting this out. This is all going to just stay on the card itself. If you're cutting this out, it wouldn't matter. You can make as big of a mess as you want. Go outside the lines as much as you want. So I have the first layer in place, and let me bring in our ink pads that we're going to be using today. I wanted to keep it really simple, and we are going to be using Old Olive for the green, Blackberry Bliss for our flowers, and then just a tiny bit of Crumb Cake for the centers of some of those flowers. So I'm going to start out with Blackberry Bliss. Let's just get these out of the way here. And I have a little blending brush, and I am also going to bring in, just off to the side here, kind of a scrap piece of paper. And this probably seems really wasteful what I'm going to do, but I'm going to ink up my brush just a little bit, and because it's so potent and so like saturated with color, I'm going to rub some of it off on my cardstock on the side so that I'm just, you know, bringing in less ink. Now I could have rubbed some of it off over here on the side of the stencil so that I could reuse that ink, pick it up later and use it. I could have been blending on another piece of cardstock just to use for another card or something, but for the purposes of our video here, I'm just kind of rubbing a little bit of it off on the side. So, okay, and then secret to this is come in with a really light hand and start off the mask. So I'm going to start rubbing my brush over here on the plastic part and just slowly make my way in, and then just keep a really light hand. And I tend to be heavy-handed when I ink blend sometimes, and that's not what you want to do on these, and I'll show you why. We're going to be using this same color 3 times for all the different shades of this one flower. So instead of bringing in, you know, 3 different shades of kind of a purplish color, I'm going to use this one ink pad for all of it. So I want to really start out with a light shade to give myself the opportunity to build on that and build those various shadows and some deeper color. So you can see how that Blackberry Bliss turned out. It's just so pretty, and I think on that basic beige, I think it gives it kind of a vintagey look. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but okay. So here is layer number 2. And again, I remember my number and my little notch are kind of down here in this corner. And one thing I'm looking at to just as a tip to get this lined up, there's kind of a little notch, like a little peninsula or something covering up the middle of this flower, same as these. So you can see like a little circle that's covering up the middle of those small little kind of daisy-like flowers. So that's one way to know that you're lined up. So once you get to like number 2 and 3, it's not a full flower that you're looking at to get it lined up. It's kind of just chunks and pieces of the flower, because you're giving it that depth and shadow now on these. Another little tip, a lot of these stencils or these masks have some really small little pieces cut out. Be very careful when you're brushing and when you're wiping them. You can wipe them with baby wipes or like a soft cloth, and like this one I kind of got caught up on my baby wipe when I was cleaning it off earlier, so it bent it just a little bit, so we're going to be extra careful right there. Again, I'm rubbing off some of my extra ink and slowly making my way into that open area, and again, light hand. Over all those open areas. And you can go back, you know, as many times as you want, really. I just like to make sure that it kind of looks like it's a nice smooth blend, no streaks, no big blotches. And part of making sure we don't get big blotches is starting off on the edge and making the way in, because sometimes when you go down at first with that first press, it gets a big blob of color. So you want to make sure you're not doing that. Okay, so let's take number 2 off. And grab number 3. Okay, now this one I believe, yes, this one we do have the centers of these little flowers open, so I'm kind of using those to line up. So you can see kind of the little holes there. So I'm going to be grabbing my crumb cake before I am completely done with this layer. Some of that up. So this one I'm going to be careful just to stay right over the purple color. I might actually just ink one more time. Okay, and we're done with that, so I'm going to put that away and grab crumb cake and the brown brush that I'm using. And this we just need such a tiny little amount, but again, I'm gonna brush some off first and then just carefully go right in those openings. And I'm actually gonna grab a little more here. Probably blotted off a little too much. Okay, there's those, and that's all we're going to use that crumb cake for. You can really see the variation of the colors starting to come in. I'll zoom in a little bit once we're completely done here, but let's grab number 4. We have 2 left, and this is where we're going to start doing that greenery. And of course, this first layer gets everything in. So basically you can look at any of the leaves and kind of wiggle around, make sure you're lined up. Okay, and our old olive. Ooh. And grabbing my green brush. And again, I'm going to start off on the plastic part and give just a real quick brush. And you can see how quick and easy these come together. They're just really cool. Like if you're not a huge fan of coloring, I think this just makes it so cool. And one thing about these bundles right now, this is a new bundle that's in the catalog. You can get all 3 pieces separately, of course, if you don't want all 3 pieces, the stamp set, the dies, and the masks. If you don't want them all, you can buy them separately, but they are bundled together right now, and that means that there's an extra 10% off while they're in the catalog. They as bundled items, you get an extra 10% off versus buying each piece separately. And there is actually an extra promotion going on right now during the month of June. I'll put the details in the description below. Stampin' Up is offering an extra 10% off all bundles. So not only do you get the 10% off that the catalog offers, there's an additional 10% off through the month of June, any bundles. So that's really cool. That's like the best deal that you can get. So I'm gonna have to take a look and see if there's some more bundles that I'm still missing and want to add to my collection. You know, if this wasn't already in my collection, I would certainly be getting this one because I just think it turns out so pretty and it's so quick. And as you can see, I used 3 ink pads, you know, a half piece of cardstock, 3 ink pads, and we have a beautiful card front just like that. Oh man, I think that purple, that Blackberry Bliss turns out so pretty on here. So I'm going to add just a little bit of a sentiment and be done with this one. But I'm also going to be showing you the next card with this same exact set. All right, and before I do any die cutting, I wanted to show you, this is the second panel that I just, I went ahead and created just a single panel on some vanilla cardstock, and you can just see these just turn out so pretty, and you can see the variation in those colors to give it kind of that shading look. And here it is compared to my one that I did on that basic beige, so you get a little bit different look. They just turn out so pretty. So now I'm going to be using the matching die to cut this out, and I'll show you what we're going to do next. All right, so let's start assembling this second card. As you can see, I used that matching die to cut the flowers out, and it just turns out so pretty. And then I actually used, so this was stamped on the vanilla. I used basic beige cardstock and cut out one more layer, and that's going to help give this some stability because I'm doing a little bit of a fun fold for this card. So I wanted to show a really quick, easy, single layer, fast, simple card, and then one that's a little bit more embellished, a little bit more going on. So you can really see how versatile this stamp set is. And one of the other thing I was going to mention is, you know, as fast as this comes together, you could really like mass produce cards. So you could, you know, do all your stamping of the outline, do a whole bunch of those, and then use mask 1 and go along and, you know, do the main color of the flower on all your cards, and then come along and do all of them, and then just, you know, have a whole bunch ready to go in just a really short amount of time. So I have these 2 layers we're using, and then the base of my card is actually, it's started out A2, so 5.5 inches tall, and then I cut it at 5 3/4 inches and then scored at 1.5. So this is 4 1/4 here, but this is 1.5 here. So this little flap is only 1.5 inches wide. I got this kind of the layout of this card from Jamie Pate, and I will link her down below. She was showing a technique in that video, which is completely different from what I'm showing, but I loved the layout of her card. Just really, I like how it looked. So I wanted to try to create the same type of card, but with this stamp set. And then I have a piece of the Designer Series paper. This is from the Country Lace Designer Series paper pack. I cut it down to 4 inches by 5 1/4, and you can see it has that kind of eyelet pattern on the one side and some stripes in the smoky slate. This is the basic beige on this side though, and I absolutely love this. It has a little bit of distressing kind of ink on it. If I could buy just a whole pack of this paper, I would. I'm going to distress the edges of this just a little bit, and I like to use just the edge of my scissors and just very carefully kind of run along the edge, and you can see I got a little bit of a tear right here, and that's okay. I'm fine with that, but I want to be careful not to like rip through the whole thing. So there's a few different ways you can do this. For me, I have my scissors handy. I just grab them and kind of run them across. And yeah, this makes a little bit of a mess, so if I wasn't doing this on camera, I'd probably be over my garbage can, just trying to collect some of this. Okay, here we go. Get rid of that, and then I'm gonna glue that directly down to the inside of this card, because this is going to be showing, of course, with this being the front flap, this is going to be showing a little bit when you have the card closed. You can leave this panel blank. It's a nice light color that I used. You could certainly write your message on there, but I wanted to dress it up just a little bit with some designer series paper, show off some of the pretty papers that are out there that Stampin' Up has. And I just added a little bit of glue to the back just to give me a little wiggle time so I can get my margins lined up. Get that pressed down. Okay, and then the next thing I did was I cut another little piece of basic beige to just 1/4 of an inch smaller each direction. So instead of 1.5 inches, this is 1 1/4 inches wide, and it is 5 1/4 inches tall. And then I ran it through the 3D embossing folder called Distress Tile, the Distress Tile 3D embossing folder. So it kind of looks like, you know, different tiles with a little bit of distressing, like some of it is a little flatter while some of it is raised up a little bit more. I think this is really pretty and kind of gives, you know, plays along with that vintage feel. I also took, since I'm showing what the embossing folder did, this is a little tag die that comes in the Layers of Beauty set with the dies. I also ran this through that 3D embossing folder just to give it a little texture. So I am going to go ahead and glue this directly to my flap on the front. Okay. I'm actually going to just open that up. That'll make that a little easier to get lined up. All right. Then before I start to glue this down, I'm actually going to take a bone folder. So I'm just going to use my Stampin' Up bone folder and give these edges just a little bit of a curl. I do use my fingers sometimes, but then sometimes I get a crease in it that I don't like. So I can just kind of gently go around the edges, and I flipped it over because I want my leaves sticking up. Gives it a little bit more texture when these are going to kind of stick up off the card. I don't want to glue them down flat. I want to give it some character. So, just a little. Okay. Now, my plan is, this is going to attach by just a few little areas here to that front flap, and then overlay so you can see the inside of the card sticking out. I kind of want the point of this leaf kind of up at the top, and then these leaves and flowers down here at the bottom. So that means I have just a few little areas that I can add glue to so that it won't show on the bottom. So, and I'm not going to go clear out to the edge because, again, I want some of those leaves kind of sticking up. That was why I curled them, so that they would stand up just a little bit. I'm going to open this back up again. And I maybe didn't add enough glue, but there we go. And then the reason I cut, one more layer out of this basic beige is I'm going to open this up and glue this directly to the back of that vanilla layer, and that will kind of sandwich this little flap in between the two and give this a little more stability, since that's what you're going to be grabbing onto to open and close the card. So for this one, I want to really get a lot of glue on it because it's what's going to kind of hold everything together. Just get it lined up with that front layer and give it a good press. There we go. That is the basic foundation of the card. kind of a fun fold, a little bit different. I'm going to bring back in my 1-layer card. As you can see, just as pretty, quick and easy, you know, nice and flat, easy to mail. This one will probably take a little extra postage. I'm okay with that. And now let's go ahead and finish these up with some sentiments and embellishments. Okay, so let's finish up this single layer card. It's not going to completely be single layer because I am going to add our sentiment on a couple little pieces of cardstock here. So what I did was I pulled in the Stylish Shapes dies and I cut a piece of green cardstock. This is actually Mossy Meadow. I didn't have Old Olive out on my desk, but I had some Mossy Meadow, so I grabbed that, and I think that looks really nice with that. And then this is also out of the Stylish Shapes dies. I used this to cut a little piece of our designer series paper from the Country Lace designer series paper, and the Thinking of You is from the Simply Said stamp set. Just a nice kind of type font. And I think I'm going to layer those together just kind of in the bottom corner down here. So I think I'm going to pop up the front panel. I'm going to use some of my little Stampin' Dimensionals and just put a couple little dimensionals there. And then I think I'll put the green straight down to the base layer of the card. Let's see here. So just glue that straight down. We'll take the backers off these and kind of get that centered right over there. I kind of like that double layer look, and then popping that up just gives it a little more interest. Okay, so this is our one where we have a few extra things going on, so I'll show you what we did here. All right, so for our sentiment, I wanted it to be a birthday card, and I used the Sweetly Scripted Happy Birthday. I just love the font of this, but it's super long if you leave both tails on, which is okay for some cards. For mine, it was a little bit too big, so I stamped it on some basic beige cardstock, cut the end at an angle, and you know, it started about over here. I did distress the edges just a little bit with my scissors, and I'm going to be putting that right about here, I think. So I'm going to add just a little bit of glue to get that. Actually, let's go ahead and do some dimensionals. And I'm only going to put a couple on. Hopefully they don't show through to the back where I put them. The reason I'm doing that is so that I can tuck a couple additional things. So actually, let's go ahead and put this on too. I used, again, the Stylish Shapes dies, the smallest little banner flag that's in there, and cut some of that designer series paper, the same one we were working with earlier. Just cut a little bit just for some interest. Add a couple little dimensionals, and I'm gonna tuck that kind of right at the top. I'm not stamping anything on it, I just wanted it for a little pop of that the matching paper that's on the back here. Okay, so there are four leaf dies that come in this set, and I just did a couple of them. The one that's probably the biggest, and then kind of the matching one with just 2 leaves. And I'm going to tuck those into a couple places here. So I'm going to add a little dab of glue. I'm not exactly sure where I'll need it, so I'm not going to get too crazy, but I want this kind of tucked up underneath here, just kind of sticking out this area that doesn't have the flowers. And then this one is going to go on the top of that banner. Again, we're adding just a little bit of glue. Sorry, my arm keeps reaching across. Oh, I have have this one kind of coming out right about there. Okay, we're almost there. Then I have this little tiny tag that I cut out and embossed with that textured embossing folder. I'm gonna just add a little bit of this brown colored twine. See if I can get this poked through. Okay. So that's that. And then the next thing, before I do anything with that, I have a little bit of kind of this green crinkly ribbon, and this is something that I custom made to match my card, and I'll show that in probably a different video. This again is an idea from Jamie Pate. So this started out as white seam binding, and I think it turned out so that it really matches our green really nicely. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to double it up approximately, nothing too fancy, and then kind of do my loopy bow. Tighten those two ends, and we get this cute little bow, kind of crinkly. And I am going to glue that right over here on the side. And let's see. Well, I'm going to tie it on before I glue it. Just do a little double knot at the top of this twine. Tighten that. I'll cut my tails off. Okay, then last but not least, let's get this bow glued on. I'm gonna kind of add a pretty good sized blob of glue here because it's kind of a big bow. Set it there, and then I'm also going to grab my reverse tweezers if I can find them, and just hang on to that for a little bit and let it dry. All right, and here are our two finished cards. Again, this is that kind of single layer with just the sentiment popped up on some additional cardstock. I think that turned out so pretty. You could add some gems to this, you know, some little pearls, things like that, maybe some ink splattering. And then here's the one where we did a little bit extra, kind of made it, I think, kind of vintagey, kind of distressed looking, you know, lots of layering, lots of texture. I love, you know, I love having lots of different textures and layers. And there's the inside. And I think that this, you know, the amount that this flower covers up, it gives plenty of room for writing a message on the inside. So there's, again, our two cards. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you watching. Make sure that if you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. Click that subscribe button so that you don't miss the next time I post another video with some new ideas and ways that you can use your products, and hopefully I've inspired you to go do something crafty today. Again, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.